Okay, I know people are still trickling in, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to get us started so that we stay on time. So I'd like to briefly introduce our grant making team. We have Jake Sinatra, who is our Director of Grant Making. Laura Matteo is our grant making associate. And we have three grant managers, which is myself, Julia Carey, and Davon Nichols, who will both be presenting this workshop with me today. If you are a returning grantee, you already have a grant manager assigned to you, who is your primary contact here at CAC. And if you are a first-time applicant, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll be happy to assist you. A grant manager will be assigned to new applicants once you have completed our eligibility check. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge the land that we stand on, and the place that we call Cuyahoga County is the land that was claimed by the United States government through force, displacement, and treaties negotiated in bad faith. We acknowledge those of the Shawnee, Miami, Erie, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Haudenosaunee Confederacy, whose lands we stand on, and the thousands of Native Americans representing over 100 tribes who currently live in Northeast Ohio today. We thank the Lake Erie Native American Council for helping us develop this acknowledgement. We also want to take a moment to share that CAC values equity. We choose to lead with racial equity in our work because the creation and perpetuation of racial inequalities is embedded into government and grant making. We confront the white supremacy that resides in our work because racial inequities across all indicators of success are deep and pervasive. We also recognize the power and potential that organizations who produce arts and cultural programming have as bearers of culture. These institutions have the power to write the narrative about who belongs and who is valued. We encourage arts organizations to connect with resources to advance equity in your own work. Visit cacgrants.org/equity or contact your grants manager to learn more. Again, we welcome everyone joining us this afternoon. I hope this workshop will be helpful to you and your organizations as you prepare for CAC's eligibility check and application deadlines over the next several weeks. In today's workshop, we'll cover CAC's mission, history, and purpose here in Cuyahoga County. We'll give an overview of CAC's grants and focus on the Project Support Grant, which is our only grant program receiving new applications this cycle. We'll outline next steps for organizations as well, and of course, we'll leave room for questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julia.
Hi, everyone. Cuyahoga Arts and Culture is the public funder for nonprofit arts and culture organizations in Cuyahoga County. It's the largest funder for arts and culture in the region. CAC has invested more than $246 million in more than 485 organizations since 2006. And this year in 2024, we're investing over $11.4 million through grants to organizations who bring arts and culture to life in our community. Cuyahoga County residents created CAC in 2006 when they approved a tax on cigarettes to support arts and culture in our community. And this levy was renewed in 2015 and now runs through 2027. CAC is an independent political subdivision of the state of Ohio. So we work closely with our local elected officials, but we're not a part of the county government. Our mission is to inspire and strengthen the community by investing in arts and culture, and our vision is for all Cuyahoga County residents to experience a meaningful cultural life. So we have three primary grant programs: General Operating Support, Cultural Heritage, and Project Support. The General Operating Support Grant is to strengthen community through meaningful, unrestricted, multi-year core support grants to arts and cultural nonprofit organizations based in and serving Cuyahoga County. The GOS grant is in year one of a 2-year cycle and will be accepting applications for the 26-27 cycle next year. The Cultural Heritage Grant is to support and strengthen the community by providing flexible support to nonprofit organizations that are representative of a culturally specific population. Cultural heritage grants are also on a 2-year cycle, and just like GOS, we'll be accepting applications for 26-27 next year. Project Support Grant. This grant promotes and encourages the breadth of arts and cultural programming in our community by funding projects of all sizes in Cuyahoga County. The Project Support Grant Program will be accepting applications this year. We do every year, and it's the only grant program open this year for grants to be made in calendar year 2025. So in addition to our 3 primary grants, we also support resident-led grant making and support artists through grants through Assembly for the Arts. We'll share a little bit more about those in the next couple slides. So CAC's funding criteria are the rubric by which panelists will review and recommend applications for funding, and they're meant to ensure that grant recipients foster a sense of belonging for all residents through their publicly funded activities. As a public funder, centering residents and community vibrancy is central to our work. And so the funding criteria are public benefit, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project. Artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create relevant and engaging projects. And organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project. And so public benefit carries the most weight, and that is true across all of CAC's grants. We will talk more about our funding criteria and how it's connected to the application process in future workshops. So outside of our 3 primary grants, we have many ways that we're investing in our arts and cultural community. Our resident-led grant-making work includes partnering with IOB, which stands for In Our Backyards, to match crowdfunding campaigns, and with Neighborhood Connections to co-fund Neighbor Up grants to arts and culture projects. These opportunities are good for small organizations that maybe aren't eligible for CAC's primary grant programs. For example, these can help fund your first arts and culture project in the county, or for groups that are not yet established as 501c3 organizations. So we will drop a link in the chat that connects to these opportunities. Cuyahoga Arts and Culture was created to make grants to nonprofits. So our support for artist grants provide resources to artists through Assembly for the Arts. Arts and Culture Network Night is a great way to connect with artists, arts organizations, employees, and other creatives for relationship building, mutual support, and to spark new initiatives. We partner with Neighborhood Connections to manage these as well. And our next network night will be on Wednesday, June 26th in the evening from 6 to 8:30. When we have more information about that, we will send that out as well. And finally, Cleveland Arts Events is a great way to connect with Cuyahoga County's vibrant arts and cultural scene. And so we invite you to visit clevelandartsevents.com to view or join our directory of artists, to post a portfolio or upcoming event, and to view current jobs and call for artists. So before we dig into the eligibility criteria for project support, I just want to orient you to where you can find information beyond this workshop. cacgrants.org is our website, and it has some very useful tools for the grant application period, the most important being the grant guidelines. We have a set of guidelines for each grant program. These are the board-approved documents that serve as the roadmap for the grant application and program year. All the information we're discussing in this workshop connects back to those guidelines, and so I recommend anyone applying for a grant to review that document carefully. To find the guidelines, you'll click Grants at the top of our website, and then you'll find a blue button that says 2025 Project Support Guidelines, and we will share a link to them here as well. The grant pages also have other useful information to refer to, like other workshops, the deadlines, and the link to the online application and reporting system, which is where you'll submit the first step of the application process, the eligibility check, which we will speak to shortly. And now I'll turn it back to Maya to talk a bit about the project support grant.
Thank you, Julia. So the purpose of Cuyahoga Arts and Culture's Project Support Grant is to promote public access and encourage the breadth of arts and cultural programming in our community by supporting Cuyahoga County-based projects. Project support grants are open to 501c3 organizations, both with and without a primary mission of arts and culture as determined by CAC. Grants may range from $1,000 to $20,000 for nonprofit organizations based in Cuyahoga County. An SMU Data Arts Funder Report is required for organizations requesting more than $5,000. And for project support grants, a 1-to-1 grant match is required. For grants that are $5,000 or less, 50% of the match can be in kind. And for grants over $5,000, the match must be cash, which could be other grants, donations, ticket revenue, sponsorships, things of that sort, but it must be a cash match. So what is a project? We define a project as a specific connected set of activities with a beginning and an end, explicit goals or objectives, and a predetermined cost that does not equal the organization's total annual budget. Projects may be one-time events, such as a festival or exhibit, or a defined series of events, such as a roster of classes or a series of productions. Projects must start and end in the 2025 calendar year, so January 1st through December 31st, 2025. Projects must be arts or cultural activities with a public arts and culture component. And we'll talk more about how to define arts and culture here on the next slide. Projects must take place in Cuyahoga County, and the project must include a public programming component. And open to the public doesn't mean that the project or the program must be free. It just must be accessible to the public. So what is arts and culture? Arts and culture is defined in the Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 3381, which is CAC's enabling law, as including but not limited to literature, theater, music, dance, ballet, painting, sculpture, photography, motion pictures, architecture, archaeology, history, natural history, or the natural sciences. Our definition is broad and can include many different types of projects, but we do have specific determinations of what is and isn't arts and culture. It's also important to point out that CAC's definition of arts and culture includes the natural sciences, and this means that we fund science and nature-based programming in addition to other disciplines like music, performing arts, and visual art. For us to fund projects, they must fit within this definition, and if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to CAC staff. To be eligible for the 2025 Project Support Grant, applicant organizations must meet all of the following eligibility criteria. They must have a permanent and viable base of operations in Cuyahoga County for at least 1 year prior to June 6, 2024. June 6 is the eligibility check deadline, so 1 year prior to the deadline for e-check. They must be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, have produced or presented arts or culture programs open to the public within the previous 2 years prior to June 6, 2024. And you must provide the required financial documents, which will include, all organizations must include a 990, and that can be a 990, 990N, or 990EZ for the most recently completed fiscal year. And must be incorporated and authorized to do business in Ohio as verified by the Ohio Secretary of State. Within these eligibility requirements, many of the organizations that receive CAC funding do not have a primary mission of arts and culture, but are doing amazing arts and cultural programming through their work. Current and past grant recipients have included community development corporations, after-school programs, and mental health agencies, as well as organizations that focus only on arts and cultural programming as well. For a list of the types of organizations who are ineligible to apply, please see our guidelines. Some examples include private non-operating foundations, units of government, and fundraising organizations such as Friends of Groups. Again, our guidelines include all of this information and have a specific list of organizations and things that are not eligible. When an organization is deemed eligible through the eligibility check, which is due June 6th, I'll say that throughout the presentation just so that it sticks in your brain. The maximum grant amount that an applicant can request is determined by CAC staff as outlined here. Applicants will be notified of the amount when they are notified of their eligibility. And here are some basic guidelines for how your project support grant is determined. So just high level noting that new applicants are eligible to receive up to $5,000. And that is just for across the board. If you have a primary mission of arts and culture, if you don't have a primary mission of arts and culture, 5,000 is the highest eligible amount for new applicants. And then applicants with a primary mission of arts and culture, we are basing it off of your 990 or 990 EZ, and then 25% of total expenses. And applicants without a primary mission of arts and culture, we're basing it off of your 990 EZ plus one prior project support grant, which is going to be the 25% of your total expenses from that final report from that project support grant. I'm making a circle, but we look at the final report expenses from the previous project support grant. And also want to note that if you file a 990N, 5,000 is the highest eligible amount to request for your project support grant as well. And as always, we're happy to discuss this more in detail if you have questions with your grant manager, or feel free to drop it in the chat right now. This year, current 2024 grantees who are doing the same project in 2025 may be eligible to bypass the full application and panel process for 2025 funding. This only applies to current project support grant recipients and grant recipients who did not choose to bypass last year's. Those groups must still complete the eligibility check and a brief project information form. Applicants applying for 5,000 or more should still complete the cultural data profile by August 1st as well. And if you are a current 2024 project support grantee and have questions about this option or your project plans for 2025, please feel free to reach out to your grant manager. I know that there are always different questions that people have, and this is our second year running this program. So just to be clear, if you received or went through the panel process last year, you are eligible for this. But if you bypassed last year, you are going to reapply this year. Here are a few pictures from some of the events and activities that have been supported in part by CAC funding in the past. And we're really excited to hear about your 2025 projects. But before we go on, I wanted to just pause here and see if there are any questions about anything we've covered so far. I know that Laura's monitoring our chat, so if there's anything in the chat, let me know. Or if you guys have questions.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
So on the eligibility check, I see fields like date organization was formed or the date of 501(c)(3) incorporation. So and this is the first time we are applying for this grant, and it's a 50-year-old organization. So of course I can provide date when the organization was formed, but what about date of 501(c)(3) incorporation? Is like that and publicly available information? It is a 501(c)(3) org. I know that, but the exact date, where do I find that?
It should be perhaps in your articles of incorporation, which we can send you a link for kind of how to look that up if you don't have immediate access to that.
Yeah, I don't have immediate access. Like I have, when you say articles of incorporation, do you mean bylaws?
Your bylaws are sometimes included, but it's like the official document that you filed when the 501(c)(3) was incorporated.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if that can be sent, that would be great.
Okay, no problem. We'll make sure to follow up with you.
Thank you.
No problem. Are there any other questions?
A couple in the chat. Oh, sorry, go ahead. So if our organization, if our nonprofit applies for project support grant, could another nonprofit for which we are a fiscal sponsor also apply for project support grant at the same time?
Well, we don't allow for grants are for applicants that are using fiscal sponsors.
Oh.
So it shouldn't be a conflict.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, Laura?
A couple in the chat. The first one, I am producing a documentary. Is that eligible?
Only if this documentary is through a 501c3 nonprofit organization, but if you as an individual are producing a documentary, this wouldn't be the place for a grant, but I think Julia listed some other options that we can forward along to you that might be a better fit.
And also has a public component. I will add on to that.
Yes, thank you.
Another question, will the grant manager assigned to us communicate if we're eligible for bypassing the full application? I'm interested in this option, but want to ensure we still submit all required materials.
Yes, so when you're going through the eligibility check process, you'll select the bypass option if that is what you're interested in. And if for any reason we feel like it would be best for you to go through the full application because it's deemed that the project is not the same project or it isn't eligible for bypass this year, we will communicate with you and you will have the opportunity to apply. So you aren't missing the opportunity to apply for this cycle. Are those all the questions so far? We'll leave time for questions at the end, so this is not the last opportunity. Just wanted to take a pause moment right here in case there was something burning in your heart, but I will move forward. And I'm going to turn it over to Devon now.
Hello, everyone. So what's next? Eligibility check is due by Thursday, June 6th at 4:30 p.m. All project support applicants must complete the eligibility check regardless of whether you're planning to bypass or complete a new application. If your organization is deemed eligible, you will gain access to the application or bypass project form, which is due on Thursday, August 1st at 4:30 p.m. We aim to approve eligibility checks on a rolling basis, so the earlier you submit, the longer time you have access to the application. Applications and bypass project forms are due August 1st as well. And in mid-September, applications that were approved to go to panel to determine whether your application will be recommended to receive funding. Grantees who bypass the application and panel will be notified of their bypass status in September by the grant team. In November, the CAC board will approve the allocation of funding for these grants and the grant awards for 2025. And then, of course, calendar year 2025 is the grant period. So the first step towards the 2025 project support grant is the eligibility check process. Organizations will submit a short form and required materials to CAC, which will determine if your organization is eligible to apply for CAC funding. This is a helpful step so you can learn if you're eligible for CAC funding before going through the complete application process. So you'll submit a basic organizational information. That would be your address, mission, and history. And we'll show that your organization is registered to do business in the state of Ohio and upload the most recently ended fiscal year 990. You'll also enter your EIN and a 501c3 verification form. New applicants or those who have received a CAC, who have not received a CAC grant since 2020 will need to upload examples or materials demonstrating that you've produced public arts and cultural programming in the last 2 years. Materials should be dated to show when they took place, should be clearly connected to your organization, and should clarify how they are a public program. For example, a screenshot to a Facebook event, photos or videos, flyers would all be acceptable options here. So the eligibility check is completed using our online application and reporting system. This is the same system we used last year, which can be found by going to the grants page on our website or directly by going to cacgrants.smapply.org. Returning applicants can use their same login information and new applicants will create a new account. Returning applicants will be taken to their current forms, so it will have your 2024 grant information. And to start a new e-check for 2025, you'll click Applications at the top. You'll then have two tasks to complete, the eligibility form and the 501c3 verification. After completing both tasks, marking both as complete, you'll be able to hit the final submit button, and your eligibility check is not completed and submitted until you have done this step and receive a confirmation email. So as part of your eligibility form, you'll designate a primary contact at your organization who will receive all communications from CAC moving forward. Be sure that this person understands their role and is a regular email checker. And then after the eligibility check, if eligible, applicants will move forward to the application process. The application requirements are similar to previous years if you are a returning applicant. So we'll share more about the application process in our upcoming application workshops. Once full applications are submitted by August 1st, the next step is the panel review. We invite panels of experts from outside of our region to review applications based on our funding criteria in either written or interactive panel reviews. Those scores and recommendations then go to our board for approval. After funding recommendations are approved by the board in November, the 2025 grant year begins on January 1st, 2025. A final report is due 30 days after the project is complete. Project support grants are reimbursement grants. Grant amount is paid out once the final report has been received and all grant requirements have been met. Grantees do have the opportunity to request an advance payment for up to 60% of their total grant amount 30 days prior to the grant or the project start date. All grantees are required to post their public arts and culture events on clevelandartsevents.com and credit CAC in your programming. We'll talk more about that over the course of the application process and grant year, but I encourage you to visit this website if you haven't already to learn more about upcoming events happening in our region. And as a reminder, you can find this information and more in our 2025 guidelines documents. So before we close, I wanted to offer some additional opportunities to connect with our team for support. Links to register are on our website. You can find this, well, thank you, in the chat, but also at cacgrants.org/grants/events-deadlines. For the upcoming technical assistance, we will have office hours hosted by our team to help with the eligibility check process and requirements. This is an informal space just for applicants to help answer any final questions you may have through the eligibility check. In July, we'll have workshops on the CDP, or also known as the Cultural Data Project, hosted by SMU Data Arts. Then in July, we'll have workshops specifically for the application process, along with 2 more office hours around this step.
Thank you, Devon. I'm sorry. Oh, thanks. So thank you so much for joining us for today's 2025 Grant Opportunities Workshop. I realized that I didn't mention that the eligibility check is now open, so you can hopefully take some time in the upcoming days to get started and let us know if you have any questions. We encourage all applicants to not wait and work on this early if you can. I know that Devon mentioned, this is a rolling basis e-check, so the earlier that you complete your e-check and we have time to process it, if eligible, the earlier you have access to your application. And hopefully Laura can just drop the SMA apply link in the chat, and that link will take you directly to starting your eligibility check. What was I gonna say? But again, all e-checks are due Thursday, June 6th, so no pressure, but whenever you can start, earlier you can start, the better. And we're now going to open the chat for additional questions about any of the content that we presented today. Laura, I don't know if there's questions that have come up since we last checked in, but
There was one that Julia answered that I'll just highlight around the public component. So the question was, for example, does this mean that we would need to put on a performance for free? And Julia answered, no, it does not need to be. It just needs to be publicly marketed and available to the general. And then we just had another question. Can any part of the project for a grant be started this year?
the total of the project that is being proposed in your application needs to take place in 2025. So the activities that you are requesting funding for need to occur in the calendar year 2025. I hope that helps. Anything else coming up for anyone while we're here together? Well, as a reminder, this workshop is being recorded and you will receive a copy of the presentation slides and recordings in the next few days. Our team is here to support you and we want you to be successful in your application. Our contact information is listed here on the screen and on our website, so please feel free to be in touch with us if we can be of any assistance to you as you're moving through this process. I'm going to stay on for a bit, so if questions come up, feel free to just jump off of your mic and let me know. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a really beautiful, wonderful day.
A question in the chat. Is the 60% prepaid amount?
Sorry, you froze for me, Laura. What was it?
Is the 60% prepaid amount part of the application?
No, it's not part of the application. So after you have gone through the application process, and if you go through the panel process and are awarded a grant, you can request an advance payment at that time once the grant program year has started and you are a month before your project start date.
Another one that just came in the chat. Are there any disadvantages for not completing a complete application?
Are there any disadvantages for not completing the application? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I mean, an incomplete application will not move forward in the process. So you will not be considered by the panel and we will notify you at that time. So if you have questions around completing the application, again, we will have office hours for that time as well. But even outside of the office hours, we're happy to
Maya,
join
I think
in.
she's asking about the bypass option. So choosing whether to bypass or not. And I'll say that we try to establish that in such a way that there is no advantage or disadvantage financially to choosing that option. The way that grants are calculated after the fact all refer ultimately to a panel score, whether it was this year's or last year's. And so those end up, you know, coming out on an even playing field. I would say if you received a panel score that was lower than you hoped for last year, you could reapply this year and maybe a higher panel score might increase your grant amount marginally. But there, of course, always is a risk to submitting the application that, you know, maybe the panel decides that this project doesn't provide public benefit and won't be recommended. So those are kind of the things you can consider and weigh when you're choosing whether to bypass or not.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, I definitely misunderstood that.
Can you talk about the CDP and what that entails?
Yes, so the cultural data profile is something that we do in collaboration or with our relationship with SMU Data Arts. And it's really to provide like a snapshot picture of your organization. And it'll include information about like your programming, some financial details. And it is a report that you are going to go in and fill out. You create your own profile, you fill out your organization's information, and then you run a report specifically to Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, which has some data points that we're looking at. If you apply for grants with other organizations, they might also ask for you to fill out this report, and then you would run a report specific to that organization. But it's looking at a high level picture of your organization, essentially.
How do I find our panel score from last year?
Your panel score from last year is listed on our website, which, Laura, if you have a chance, we could drop that link in the chat, but it is available on our website. I know that I asked you to do something, Laura, and look at the chat, so I'll look at the chat. Okay. Right.
Can you post the link to find the articles? Or how that can be searched? The
Yeah.
articles of incorporation.
Yes. I don't know if
I
anyone.
am dropping the link for the panel scores right now. I will add this is just the written panel. So this is only for grants that were under $5,000. And if that does not apply to you, you can reach out to your grant manager.
I don't know. Does one of my teammates have the ability to include the link for the articles of
Jake-
incorporation?
I
Jake
just
just got
posted
it.
the business
Oh, you did?
search link. Yes. So,
Thank you, Jake.
yep, that should give you what you need.
Well, if no one else has any questions, I'll conclude today's presentation. I hope everyone's had a chance. Our information is also listed on our website. So if you lose this information, you can always go to cacgrants.org to find our contact information and links to all of the information that we have included as well. And as we mentioned before, all of this information will be sent in a follow-up email in the upcoming days. But it was really great being here with you guys this afternoon, and we are looking forward to receiving your eligibility checks and your applications, and we will be in touch.